Hello, my beautiful co-creators of the new paradigm. Thank you for tuning in or tuning in again if you've been here before. My name is Wieteke. I am an intuitive, an artist, and I absolutely love exploring dreams, the inner world, and symbols for the purpose of deepening my understanding of self and all that is. I believe that when we share and explore together, we dissolve layers of forgetfulness and remember the depths of what it is that has been lying inside of us all along, and what a journey that is. In this particular video, I will be sharing with all of you another vision that I've had over the past 20 years that stayed with me and that I've been feeling wants to be shared right now. So this one will be about the economic system, the banks, finances, and also about divine masculine and divine feminine energy. This particular download was experienced by me as a kind of a blend between a dream and a full-blown vision. So it started as a dream, then it turned into a vision, and then it returned to being a dream. And for that reason, I suppose, there are a lot of symbols in there. So many, in fact, that I felt called to look some up. And as I translated this report, so to speak, I actually discovered quite a lot of extra symbology, a whole layer that I had not realized before. Because the original is written down in my dream diary that I wrote at the time in Dutch. This download I received on October 19th, 2013, and that night, in fact, was a full moon. I also wrote that in the dream diary, so I thought I should add that. So yeah, I wrote it down originally in Dutch. I translated it to English for this video. And as I did, I had several mind-blown experiences where I was like, what? No way! It's crazy how language as a top layer of reality wherein we attempt to communicate as careful and complete as possible, that within that layer, so many surprises can be hiding when you shift language or language perspective. I'm so intrigued by that. I absolutely love language and learning also about the origin of words, the etymology and stuff like that. But so my first language is Dutch, and that's why I wrote this transmission or download in Dutch. I had to translate it to English. I would say that would be my second language. I can have a pretty good conversation and understand a lot in German as well. And then French and Spanish would be like a shared fourth place, I suppose. And then there are some other languages that I can speak some words in. I feel that wherever I travel, I always really do want to learn hello, how are you, thank you, goodbye, things like that, so that you can at least be polite, wherever you are. But in this video, we're gonna go into some fascinating overlays between the Dutch and the English language as well, for those who are into it. This download is all about the banking system or the economy. And for that reason, I have actually written a short affirmation to start this video with, because I understand that for a lot of people, speaking about the banking system going through some kind of change may cause a level of concern, potentially. And that is completely understandable, particularly in the West, because we have very strongly intertwined our entire lifestyle with a digital economic system. And if that system changes, we are in fact way more lost, I would say, or way more vulnerable than people in countries who are just paying cash or using cash currencies and are more directly connected also to the land, to the earth. for their own practical needs. So I can see when we begin to awaken to the holistic picture of it all, and when we begin to realize how vulnerable our Western world systems really are, I can see how that may cause a little bit of concern or stress. But in order to soften that out a little bit, I have written this short affirmation that maybe you can choose to use if it resonates with you. So I've written this from the viewpoint of the I am, that I am, the source or God energy, however you would like to call it, from which I believe we all create our reality, whether it is conscious or unconsciously. So here we go. The affirmation is, I am the gentle shift in the world's financial system. I am the presence of wisdom, order, and well-being for all. As the old dissolves, only the light remains. All transitions unfold in perfect harmony for all of mankind and the earth itself. And so it is. So you can choose to use this for yourself whenever you feel a little bit uneasy about these kind of rumblings underneath the banking system. Or you cannot use it or find another permission slip that works for you. I just felt like throwing that in here. Okay, so back to the actual vision. Like I said, it started out as a dream and then turned into a vision. It was, in fact, a 3-part experience for me. The first was incredibly short, and basically I feel its only function was for me to understand a time frame regarding to when this might happen. And in the first act, you could say, I saw one of my dear friends, and I saw he had changed in age. So I went into the dreaming state, and the first thing I saw was this friend. I met him, and he was, I guess, 10 or maybe at the most 12 or 15 years older, guessing from his looks, than he actually was when I was having the dream. So I had this dream on October 19th, 2013. So right now is already 12 years later. So yeah, maybe it's about time I start sharing this one. So that was the first part. The second part actually is a combination between disclosure and the transition of the banks. And the third part covers the idea of a transition between divine masculine and divine feminine energies. So my idea was to just go through all of it and then reread it with some of the symbols that I have looked up so that you can play with that in your own way. Maybe you've had similar symbology in your own dreams. Maybe you see some symbols that I missed. If you do, please leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments, because just like in previous videos, I really enjoy reading your thoughts and ideas. And I really believe that together we see a lot more than alone. And that also we can learn a lot from each other's dream or multidimensional experience sharings. So, okay. I'm gonna start reading it from paper, so excuse me when you see stuff like this. I'm just holding it up here, and some of the scenes were so visual that I asked AI to make a visual impression of that, so I may throw in some illustrations here and there. Just know that they are AI generated. It is never a one-on-one with what I actually saw in the dream or in the vision in this case. They're impressions, and they're there for atmosphere, and in some cases seeing imagery or recreated imagery also helped me to understand the deeper meaning of certain aspects of this this experience. So, okay, the first part was just me seeing that friend being some years older than he was at the time when I was having the vision. Then it shifts into a different kind of setting. It is nighttime with a clear, starry sky. I find myself on the rooftop of a bank building. From the sky, the ETs appear to be arriving. There is a lot going on, all at the same time. The sky is buzzing with activity. Human craft, helicopters, and UFOs, they're everywhere. I see a large screen hovering in the sky in the shape of an ET face. I don't immediately know what it is being used for. It seems to be for the sake of slowing down or hiding something. Though it looks like a mask to me, the first word that comes is screen. Maybe the ETs are using these screens to work on or with the Earth. Or maybe it was man-made in order to cause confusion. Beams of energy, like red lasers, are streaming down from the sky to the Earth. Some of these are coming through the screen of the ET face. Meanwhile, 3 gigantic nails are being hammered into the bank, right into the building itself. For me, this immediately translates to the deeper understanding that in some way the economy is being locked down or sealed. I feel completely at ease as I witness all of this. The ETs are also walking among the people. Clearly, things are being reorganized. There is a lot of activity, but no panic. There are also little shops housed in an extra building on top of the bank, or perhaps they are the top floor of the bank. As I walk around, I get some beautifully detailed images. I see exquisitely crafted gingerbread figures decorated with sugar filigree in the shapes of people, fish, and dolphins. They're for sale, stacked in sets of 6, packaged in clear cellophane plastic. I think about taking some along to share with others later. There is also a shop selling stamps. Very charming, old-fashioned ones. I consider buying one for my niece so she can play with it later. When I reach out to choose one for her, they suddenly look even more beautiful. But I soon discover that they're very expensive. And as it turns out, they're actually collector's items. The display case is like an art collection. The stamps are stored on top of beautiful little booklets, which in turn hang in softly sewn velvet pouches, so you can carefully pick them up and examine them. After I picked out the top stamp to look at it more closely, I carefully put it back on a lower shelf. Everything is beautiful, but in the end, I choose not to buy or take anything with me. So this is the end of the first scene. Suddenly, in the next scene, a woman with whom I can swap places whenever I like is awkwardly hanging up laundry. Clearly, these are bed linens. Okay, so I'm gonna insert a little bit of information here. When I say I can swap places with her whenever I like, I'm sure many of you have had this in your own dreams. If you haven't, or if you have, in either case, share below. I'd love to hear more about it. But maybe some of you are familiar with this, that in your dream there are other people, quote unquote, and when you focus on them with a curiosity, you become them. So in other words, when you focus on them strongly enough, you can suddenly see through their eyes. You become that persona just for a moment, or maybe you permanently become them in that dream and you're them the rest of the dream. But in this case, I knew I saw the woman from a third point of view. I could see her from my own perspective. And I knew, or I sensed, that if I would focus on her more strongly, that I would be able to see the world through her eyes. And that did happen in this download as well. And I'll share more about that later. So in the next scene, a woman with whom I can swap places whenever I like is awkwardly hanging up laundry. Clearly, these are bed linens. She is on a hill overlooking a plaza. The atmosphere feels like Morocco or somewhere similar in climate. A father with his 2 young sons, both approximately 9 years old, comes over and gets involved. The woman has everything pinned down so her laundry setup won't fall over while the linens are drying. The washing lines and poles are wedged in between chairs and a market table. It works for her, even though it doesn't seem to be the easiest or most comfortable setup. The father orders his sons to help remove the laundry. The woman is already taking the clothes pegs off, but the boys have to do it because their father said so. I notice that the boys don't really know how to help. They simply haven't learned. So mostly they just get in the way. Running around, playing hide and seek with the sheets, they accidentally smudge the previously clean laundry with their play. Their father stands by, obviously annoyed. Then one of the boys trips and falls from the market stall that serves as a part of the base for the drying setup. He falls to the ground. Suddenly, he appears to have turned into a porcelain doll. Because of the fall, and him now having turned into a porcelain doll, his head has come off and is now lying beside his body. I am shocked as an observer in this part of the dream. Somebody calls out, "Where is his body?" Though I can see it right there, it's as if the separation needs to be spoken out loud. When the body is found, we all see that it is simply broken at the neck, like a porcelain doll might break. There is no blood, nothing scary, everything looks clean, almost unreal. It's a perfect straight cut. I then notice that the head is crying on its own. There's no sound, there's just some tears coming from the eyes. The father runs to the plaza, shouting for a doctor. At this point, I shift into the perspective of the woman, and suddenly I also feel the urge to shout for help, or at least to want to do something, to participate in the scene. This, by the way, was my rational mind tuning into the whole situation. It was not what the woman herself wanted to do, if you understand what I mean. So even though I went into her perspective and added this information from my own conditioning, from my own programming, this was not what was meant to happen. And so barely any sound came from my throat. So I actually couldn't speak. Then I realize I don't actually want to call for help, or rather, it is not my place to do so in this situation. And that's when I realized again, something bigger is playing out here. And I retreated my attention from the viewpoint of the woman at that point. So I was in there for a moment and expressing my own conditioning. I became aware of that and retracted so that I became the observer again. I realized at this point it's not my place to do any kind of shouting and screaming for help for the boy. I then see or discover that the break is easily fixed. They, meaning other people, placed the head back on the body of the boy, and suddenly the boy is an adult and completely healed. There is only a very thin line where the break was, no trace of any real damage. The father and the other boy are no longer in focus. All attention is now on the man who has risen, fully whole. And that is the end of this dream. So let me see. The part that was experienced by me as a full-blown vision was the part where I was standing on the roof of the bank and I saw all the UFOs and all the activity going on in the sky. The rest was more like a super lucid dream. Okay, so what I'll do next, I'm gonna read this entire download again. And now I'll include the symbology that I have looked up. Scene 1. It is nighttime with a clear, starry sky. I find myself on the rooftop of a bank building. Immediately right there, there's so much, it's crazy. I had to break down so many things here. So first of all, the nighttime for me means a time that is still unconscious, or something, information that is laying in the unconscious level of the collective. Nighttime can also be a moment for sprouting or growth, but it is before it sees the light of day in the literal sense. So this is what I feel I was looking at the time, that this particular energy momentum that I picked from the collective field was still germinating, just getting some first little roots out. And maybe where we are today is where this little sprout is beginning to come out of the ground and grow some first little green leaves. Who knows? So it is nighttime with a clear starry sky. So there is light, the starlight, the consciousness of the galactics, the consciousness of our higher self. There is some light and it is shining through. I find myself on the rooftop of a bank building. Rooftop, a bank building, symbol of the pinnacle of the old financial system. Collective values and worldly structures. The roof is the overview transition point. The sky, in general, is a connection to the higher realms, potential for new influences or cosmic perspective, particularly when it is night and there is a starry sky. Now, let's go from there. From the sky, the ETs appear to be arriving. There is a lot going on all at the same time. The sky is buzzing with activity. Human crafts, helicopters, and UFOs, they're everywhere. I see a large screen in the shape of an ET face. I don't immediately know what it is being used for. It seems to be for the sake of slowing down or hiding something. Though it looks like a mask to me, the first words that comes is screen. Maybe the ETs are using these screens to work with or on the Earth. Maybe it was man-made in order to cause confusion. Alright, so ETs/aliens, embodiments of new consciousness, paradigm-shifting intelligence, or quote-unquote outside forces bringing transformation. Then next, screens or faces, the Phoenician ET mask kind of shape that I saw hovering in the sky. Filters of perception, masks of identity. The face is identity, recognition. The screen is mediation, separation, or transmission. The screen as a parachute, for instance, perhaps it slows down the quote-unquote fall of transformation processes, making them gentler, slowing down transformation so it is less shocking, or making changes more hidden or subtle. Screen memory. Now this is an interesting one. I could make a whole video just on that one. Screen memory. Sometimes we see a man, but it is actually an ET in our dreams, for instance. Or sometimes we see an ET, but in fact it is man. Are we seeing a man who is really an ET, or an ET who is actually just a man? What is revealed and what remains disguised behind the mask? So I was not sure of this. I still am not certain of what this meant or what the mask was exactly connected to. All I knew then and know now is that it stands for something being hidden. It has its own agenda. Some agenda is being played out. Masks are not necessary if you're fully transparent, if you have nothing to hide. So for some reason, that mask was also in the sky. And I would not be surprised. I don't know about this, but I'm so curious about your thoughts. I would not be surprised if it comes to the fall of the banking system in one way or another, that might actually coincide with disclosure, or that when disclosure maybe ramps up to such a degree where it begins to truly become mainstream and there's no way around it for governments to acknowledge this, that would be the excellent moment to have the economic shift or the fall of the banks, for instance, as some kind of a distraction, mode or technique to take away the attention from the ET disclosure. I don't know. I could see that playing out that way potentially. If you look at all of this as one big game of chess, this is a predictable move, actually, if you ask me. But that's just me. And anyway, the idea of screen memories came to my mind when I reread this segment, because that too is a real phenomenon for those of you who are more familiar with ET encounters and or having some recollection of your dream encounters, but they seem fuzzy or a little weird. There's a whole reason for why we have screen memories, by the way. My personal experience with those is that they're there to test us, that our own higher self, in a sense, puts them in place. We are capable of recognizing or observing another consciousness form to the degree that we are at ease with letting that information in. So in order to prevent the rational mind from getting too upset or confused or distracted from our human life journey that our soul chose to have this experience in the human form, in order to prevent that, we may at times give information to ourselves through the dream experience in such a way that it is being broken down into little segments, and we just get, we see a little snippet of what it actually is before we get to see the full thing if we're not ready for it. Or we get to see, and there's many reasons why this may be done or manifests in such a way for people, because we have so many layers on that onion of our personality construct that need to be peeled down before we can be truly at ease with the deeper realization of actually being multi-dimensional beings ourselves, that in the encounter of multidimensional aspects of our greater selves, we are really being given stepping stones. And I feel that screen memories to some degree have that purpose, and many other things. But that's really something I would have to make a different video about that. Otherwise we're getting too distracted from this actual transmission right here. All right, so I mentioned the screen, and then we're going back to the actual vision. Beams of energies like red lasers are streaming down towards us. Some of these are coming through the screen of the ET face, which is remarkable. Meanwhile, 3 gigantic nails are being hammered into the bank, right into the building itself. For me, this immediately translates to the deeper understanding that in some way the economy is being locked down or sealed. I feel completely at ease as I witness all of this. The ETs are also walking amongst the people. Clearly, things are being reorganized. There is a lot of activity, but no panic. Okay, and then there are also little shops housed in an extra building or perhaps on the top floor of the bank. Okay, so let's break down this segment. The red lasers coming from the sky streaming down to the earth and some of them moving through the screen of the ET face. That's definitely fascinating. What I picked up out of that as potential interesting symbology, just to lay a foundation, the earth or the ground is the material world, the collective grounding current reality. Red lasers may represent penetrating energy, transformation, quote unquote, cutting through old patterns. Red is the color of the root chakra, material or physical change. The 3 giant nails, closure, sealing, finality. Think of the 3 nails of the cross, transformation through sacrifice, or the end of an era. 3 is Trinity, completion, or maybe Tesla's 369. And that means Nikola Tesla, not Tesla, the electric car. Just adding for clarity. Nikola Tesla used to say, if you would like to understand the keys of the universe, think in terms of 3, 6, and 9. So there's something about these numbers that he understood that we are in the process of remembering. And all of these 3 numbers, I only realized as I was making this entire preparation for this video and writing it all down, all these numbers are in this download, all of them separately. Then shops, or the top floor of the bank, they stand for new values built on top of the old system: commerce, creativity, opportunity, community. Then we continue. As I walk around there, meaning in the vision, I walked into those little shops on top of the bank. As I walk around there, I get some beautifully detailed images. I see exquisitely crafted gingerbread figures decorated with sugar filigree in the shapes of people, fish, and dolphins. They are for sale, stacked in sets of 6, packaged in clear cellophane plastic. Now, this is a really interesting, crazy translation thing I experienced here, because gingerbread in Dutch means speculaas, an entirely different word, not even close. And also the word bread is just not in there. It's just not there. So in my dream diary, where originally I had this transmission written down, it said speculaas, and I never thought anything other of it than, oh, well, that's interesting. But it didn't make sense the same way it does now, because when I translated it into English, it turned into gingerbread, and all of a sudden it gained meaning, which was pretty cool, because now we have laying side by side bread, or a type of bread, gingerbread, fish, and dolphins, or the shape of those at least. And bread and fishes are the core symbols of the biblical miracle where Jesus, or Joshua, feeds thousands of people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It really is the sign of abundance that multiplies when shared. It is not about money, but about the power of giving, faith, and community. And for me personally, dolphins represent a ton of different things, but definitely joy and playfulness, sincerity, telepathic communication. I've swum with dolphins on a regular basis, and they're wonderful beings to practice telepathic communication with if you're interested in ET connections. I also feel that they work very strongly together with Sirius energy, Sirius as in the star Sirius. And in their own way, they actually Dolphins and whales, or the sea's cetaceans, in their own way, I feel, are activators of some of the ley lines on our world, with their song, with their presence, with their energy and their knowledge. I feel that they play a pretty big part, actually, in our evolution, even though it may seem to be in the background for most people. And it's not talked about too much outside of maybe even in the spiritual scene, not that much. I haven't heard too many people about it. But this is my personal idea around this. And so for me, it doesn't seem strange at all that mankind would be on one side and that there would be a fish in the middle, which can also be seen as the ichthys symbol. I don't know how to pronounce that in English. How do you say it? Ichthys? Ichthys? I don't know. So we say ichthys. The ichthys symbol, which is also the symbol for Christianity, that is meeting the dolphin energy, as if the human energy is interlinking with the dolphin energy in a kind of infinity symbol. And right smack in the middle is the Christ consciousness energy represented to us by that fish symbol, potentially. This is just what came to my mind as I was breaking it all down, and I saw this abundance of symbology right there, all right there, on this table in this shop. So where does this happen in the dream? It happens on the rooftop of the bank, the highest point of the old financial system, meaning potentially the new economy, the true abundance, exists above the old. The old system, the bank locked down by 3 giant nails, represents scarcity, control, and fear. But above that is a new market, the sharing of spiritual nourishment, joy, and connection. These gingerbread and fish figures are sold in sets of 6, the number of humanity, harmony, the day of creation, waiting to be claimed by anyone ready to rise above the old paradigm. So the biblical meaning of the number 6, that's what this day of creation is based on. In the Bible, the number 6 is the number of humanity. On the 6th day, God created humankind, male and female, marking the moment when spirit becomes embodied as form. Definitely on a metaphysical level, I can follow along with this part as a symbol or one way of looking at the number 6. 6 represents harmony, beauty, and earthly order, but it is not yet completion. And then to go even deeper into the number 6, and I have a feeling some of you already went there with your mind. In the book of Revelation, in the Bible, 666 or 666 is actually called the number of the beast. Mystically, this does not point to evil, but to natural man, humanity living purely from material awareness. Seen psychologically, this quote-unquote beast reflects instinct-driven consciousness, fear, survival, lack. The spiritual journey moves beyond this state, from unconscious survival to awakened, embodied divinity. So I just wanted to add that because it is definitely remarkable that these 3 symbols, the human, the fish, and the dolphin, were stacked in little piles of 6, each of them, and then wrapped in clear cellophane. So this cellophane, I also looked up the idea of all of this being wrapped into plastic. The bread and fishes are visible. The potential is right there, but they're sealed in plastic. So the sharing is blocked. Unlike in the miracle where Joshua breaks the bread and fishes with his hands to share with everyone, here the abundance is quote-unquote packaged, untouchable, and only available if you pay a collector's price. It seems to be the opposite of a miracle. The real abundance comes when we break the barriers, share what we have, and stop hiding away our gifts. The plastic stands for artificial separation. It is the barrier of the old system, scarcity, ownership, value tied to exclusivity. The collectors can be seen as hoarders of potentially spiritual wealth. It is not circulating. You can see it, but you cannot touch it. You can want it, but you can't freely give or receive it. Of course, this is also in the mind. All of this is at the level of the mind. It is the limitation game that we have all come to explore in this lifetime and that we are still looking at right now. I think also the plastic, it's just the thinnest possible layer imaginable. This wrapping isn't a big deal at all. Most of all, it really just reveals to us how close we are and how easy it could be to open up these packages and start sharing, or just get our hands in there and do something with it, which would really be paradigm shifting. It would be breaking through the barrier of the illusion of limitation, I feel. Okay, so here in the transmission or in the download, my rational mind actually hopped on board for a moment. When I said I think about taking some along to share with others later, that was my rational mind. It was the observer mind in the dream part here, witnessing it from my own conditioning. I'm seeing these beautiful, wonderful gingerbread figures and I'm thinking, I might take some with me for sharing with them with other people later. But there's a purpose for that, I noticed later down the line. But first, I'm also noticing that the shop is selling stamps, very charming old-fashioned ones. I consider buying one for my niece, so she can play with it later. Again, this is the rational mind. When I reach out to choose one for her, they suddenly look even more beautiful. And I know why this happened. I realized it as I was going through this download again. The moment you see something and you have a desire to share it, it increases in value. It increases automatically, energetically in value, because you know this is something that could be shared. So that was the meaning, the little hidden meaning I feel in that moment where magically all of a sudden the stamp became even more beautiful. Then I discover that they're very expensive. And as it turns out, they're actually collector's items. The display case is like a sort of art collection. The stamps are stored on top of beautiful little booklets, which in turn hang in softly sewn velvet pouches, so you can carefully pick them up and examine them. After I picked out the top stamp to look at it more closely, I carefully put it back on a lower shelf. Everything is beautiful, but in the end I choose not to buy or take anything with me. So the stamps can be looked at as another form of identity, validation, authority, the urge to quote-unquote mark or label, old forms of value/approval. Collector's items or art collection, rarity, rarity, exclusivity, value based on preservation, not sharing. For the booklets or the pouches, layers of protection, tradition, hidden knowledge or treasures. Pouches, miniature form of luggage, something we need to hold on to, stuff. And then beauty in general refers to aesthetic, higher order, resonance with harmony, and the new values of the age of Aquarius. For instance, it's just one way to look at it. Maybe you have different things that can be added to that. Then please do share. But this is one way to look at this. So for me, when I look at all of this stuff together, you could say that the stamps, to me, very much remind me of the idea of identifying something, considering it correct or incorrect. You know how in this is something in my mind this belongs in movies. but how there would be some guy behind the desk and he has this like big stamp, and he either denies or approves of certain ideas, and they're on paper, and then the stamp goes on top of it, denied, approved. That's kind of the immediate image I get in my head when I think of these old school stamps. And that kind of judging is something of the old paradigm. And even more so, this stamp is resting on a book, a really old book that clearly contains information that maybe is supposed to be out there, that is supposed to be accessible to all of us, and may have been limited or weighed down by this kind of approval denying thinking, this black and white judging. And maybe that's why it never got out there, and the stamp is on top of it, so you cannot open the book. But it's all being treated very carefully, which is interesting. The image that I made with AI couldn't generate a pouch the way I saw it in the vision. It was too complicated because the pouch was really specific. It had like cushioning in it, but it was a pouch, like a miniature bag with beautifully silver handles, like pretty, just artful. It couldn't generate that image. It was too complicated, at least for the version of AI that I used for this goal. So it just made a pillow, which is still okay, a miniature pillow. It still gives away a bit of the idea that all of this is being treated with lots of care. But also, if you do keep in mind that the original image was in fact a pouch, you would be able to pick it up. And the moment you pick up the handles, the booklet and the stamp would immediately be inside of the pouch, and you could take all of that with you. But it also means you're taking something with you that is physical, that is material, that is based on old paradigm thinking, and that has been used as a method of judging. And we actually do no longer need that kind of luggage. And that's why I feel I intuitively in the dream picked up one of those sets, stamp, booklet, pillow, from the top shelf. And I looked at it closely because I was just admiring all of the detail. And then I put it back on a lower shelf because I intuitively knew this is not supposed to be on the top shelf anymore. It's not supposed to be the top of the pyramid. This belongs somewhere lower where everyone can reach it, where we can all access it whenever we want in a freestyle, flowing manner, when it doesn't have this insane price tag on it. Also, when we can just take it apart and discuss it and openly talk about it. So I feel that's probably why I put it down on a lower shelf. Not that I was thinking about that in the vision at all. It was automatic. It just happened. And these are the kind of moments in your dream when you see yourself do something and you're mindless about it. You're just channeling the motion of picking it up from there and putting it back over there. And then only later, when you revisit the entire storyline, you're like, why did I actually do that? And if the rational mind was not involved in that moment, which it wasn't for me when that happened, that is an interesting part to look at, to break down and to see what you were telling yourself through your own dream story. So that is the entire disclosure and banking chapter, so to speak. Let's jump to the second half, the second scenario, which is also incredibly rich in detail and symbols. So here we go. Suddenly, in the next scene, a woman with whom I can swap places whenever I like is awkwardly hanging up laundry. Clearly, these are bed linens. She is on a hill overlooking a plaza. The atmosphere feels like Morocco or somewhere similar in climate. All right, so the laundry or the bed linens can be looked at as personal or collective bedding, cleansing old patterns, preparing for rest, healing, or transition, a place to rest, to lay down, to relax, tune in with the higher realms through dreaming. The bedding, this is an interesting one because this gave me another translation insight, just like speculaas means gingerbread, and it revealed the bread next to the fishes for me. Bedding in Dutch actually does not refer to sheets or blankets at all. It just doesn't. But the same word, exact same spelling, and even the exact same pronunciation means the supportive, nurturing foundation that holds you, like the bed of a river or the safe ground that you can rest on. So in this dream, I love how both meanings are there, in fact. We're longing for comfort, for soft sheets, the warmth of bedding, as you would see it in English. But we're also longing for that deeper sense of belonging and support in our own spiritual journey, which bedding in Dutch would be the perfect word for, this is beautiful. I love how this went side by side. So in this download, both meanings really play together, the longing for comfort and the safe foundation for true transformation and connection to take place upon. The woman, obviously, in this second scene, I feel she represents the divine feminine, but still in the process of becoming. So she is there, she is hanging the laundry, but she does so awkwardly. So she is doing it with some tension, pinning everything down, trying to control the conditions for safety. This is when the feminine energy isn't in a surrender stage yet. She can't fully flourish or blossom yet because the conditions just aren't right for it yet. Or in Dutch, you could say the bedding is in fact lacking. The laundry that she's hanging, in English again, is bedding, the bed linens, which are an invitation to rest. I guess that's true for herself, but also for the collective. So she's showing that when I can rest, we can all rest. I can just feel it in my in my body as I'm saying that out loud. Yet, so in this situation, as for now, in this part of the scene, all of that is handled with a sense of anxiety to some degree. She is still under stress. She is on a hill overlooking a plaza. Here we go. The hill is a viewpoint, elevated awareness, broader perspective, collective gathering place. So it is the connection to the collective of mankind as well, other people where we come together and where we exchange information also. The atmosphere feels like Morocco or somewhere similar in climate. Morocco, the south of Spain, that's kind of what it looked like. These are the first areas that came to my mind. Then, in this scene, a father with his two young sons, both approximately 9 years old. So there you have the number 9, completion, ready for transformation. Both approximately 9 years old. He comes over with his kids and gets involved. The woman has everything pinned down, so her laundry setup won't fall over, while the linens are drying. The washing lines and poles are wedged between chairs and a market table. It works for her, even though it doesn't seem to be the easiest or most comfortable setup. The market stall can be seen as a symbol for economic base or market forces, something that supports the structures of society. And then the chairs, I thought about that later, maybe positions of importance. Maybe only important people get to sit on the chairs. We have chairs in our governments or seats. I don't actually know what the correct terms are for that in English, but we have in Dutch the same idea. The seats, the chairs, and then the market stall, that's what the woman is now using to keep her lines up, so that the linens can dry. And for me, it just shows that everything is connected. It is all connected. When the one thing falls over, the other thing falls over, and all of it is in need of relaxation. All of it is just craving this embedding in the double meaning of that word, as we now have come to understand that it has a double meaning. And then, of course, also the masculine energy comes in. The father, patriarchal energy, authority, masculine principle in process of transformation, as is the feminine energy in this segment of the download. They're both not completed or in their full center just yet, but they'll get there. The two sons or the boys can be looked at as symbols for duality, childlike aspects of masculine energy, the quote-unquote immature or unintegrated side seeking guidance. The father orders his sons to help remove the laundry. The woman is already taking the clothes pegs off, but the boys have to do it because their father says so. I noticed that the boys don't really know how to help. They just haven't learned. So mostly they get in the way, running around, playing hide and seek with the sheets. They accidentally smudge the previously clean laundry with their play. Not to any fault of their own, but they've not been informed. They haven't learned. They don't have the information that is actually necessary to understand how to co-create with a balanced divine feminine energy. They don't understand that yet. So this is what's happening. It's duality in action. They're both running different ways. I kind of like that they're playing hide and seek behind the sheets, because it's also such a wonderful metaphor for the version of reality that we are co-creating currently. We are playing hide and seek. And we do that, not literally with sheets, but if you look at sheets, oh my gosh, if you look at sheets as the foundation on which we sleep, and if you look at sleep as a metaphor for forgetfulness, then we play hide and seek with sheets. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're hiding behind our own forgetfulness through the forgetting of the real essence of one another, the authenticity, the humanity. We forget ourselves. It is, and vice versa. It's this. I'm like, wow, this download, it's crazy. So anyway, these little boys accidentally smudge the previously clean laundry with their play. The father stands by. He is clearly annoyed. Then one of the boys trips and falls from the market stall that serves as part of the base for the drying setup. So now a part of the duality idea or illusion falls from the market stall. Let's bring in the market stall again. Economic base, market forces support structures of society. That ingredient in this entire setup, he was playing on top of it and he fell down from it. As he falls to the ground, he turns into a porcelain doll, which is another kind of mask, really, because a porcelain doll often represents, in dreams at least, it often represents our most sensitive and vulnerable parts. Beautiful, refined, yet easily broken. Porcelain is fragile, but also crafted, shaped, dressed, and positioned by others. This points to moments in life where we may feel lived by expectations rather than fully inhabiting our own embodied self, where we may be feeling more object than subject. There is also a puppeteer here. The doll is not self-directing, but directed. So the father figure in this case, which is not yet the completed masculine, is giving orders to the boys, and he gets frustrated when he sees that they don't do what he wants them to do. So he's a bit of a puppeteer here. And the boys are just executing orders without really knowing who they are themselves or what they're doing it for. So there's a whole unraveling happening in the moment when that one boy falls down the market stall and turns into a porcelain doll. It's like he reveals his true nature, or it's still the old paradigm version of him. that becomes revealed as he falls. Suddenly, he appears to have turned into a porcelain doll because of the fall. His head comes off and is now laying beside his body. I am shocked. The observer me in this part of the download was absolutely shocked. Somebody calls out, "Where is his body?" Though I can see it right there, it's as if the separation needs to be spoken out loud. So this was an important part in the download because it had to be pointed out in a dramatic way that it appears as if the body is lost and there's only the head and all else is lost and no longer can be repaired. That's the energy that was behind that. Somebody shouting this out. Now, when the body is actually found, everyone can see that it is simply broken at the neck, just like a porcelain doll might break. And there is no blood, nothing scary. Everything looks clean, almost unreal. It's just a perfect straight cut. And then I notice in the corner of my eye, I see the head, and I notice that the head on its own, independently from the body, is crying. Silently, a tear goes from the eye to the ground. At that point, the father runs to the plaza, shouting for a doctor. And that is when I, the conditioned I, me, persona, Wieteke, I shift into the perspective of the woman who is also in this scenario still, and I feel the urge to shout for help as well, wanting to do something in order to rescue, quote unquote, the boy. But barely any sound comes from my throat. Then I realize it is not my place to shout for help. It is not what I'm supposed to do in that scenario, and I retract from that perspective, back into my observer role. So we're almost there. If you've gotten this far into the video, thank you for being on this journey with me. It is quite a journey. And again, this was by far the longest vision/dream experience out of the entire list that I am eager to share with you guys. So thank you for bearing with me. And I hope you're enjoying this entire breakdown. Let me know in the comments below if you will. Okay, so here we go with the symbology. The head-body separation. It's a pretty obvious symbol, I think, but the split between the intellect and embodiment, maybe the mind and the heart, the thinking and the feeling, or the thinking versus the being, however you would like to look at that. So there's that. And then what I think is also really interesting here, and I missed that before, but I learned it as I was doing the breakdown of this download. The father runs to the plaza and shouts for a doctor. So he includes the community. He actually reaches out to the collective. When the father runs to the plaza shouting for a doctor, the pain moves from private to public. The father represents old authority and responsibility, but also the one who had just directed the boys, setting the scene in motion. Calling for a doctor symbolizes the reflex to seek healing through external experts, systems, or authority. Yet the dream later shows something different. True healing does not come from outside intervention, but from inner transformation and integration. This moment exposes the limits of old solutions. Of course, all of this is within the framework of this dream download and its symbology. I don't mean to speak in black and white terms about doctors or healers of any kind, and I'm really grateful that we have such an incredibly rich amount of facilitators in this world that we can turn to when we need some assistance at times, as we all do. That's just my personal opinion. But from the setting in this dream, this is a beautiful symbol where an old pattern is being revealed. And there's a lot of beauty, I feel, in the pain, quote unquote, moving from private to public. And I feel that that's a big part of what we're being invited to do now as well, to open up about our personal stories, about our personal viewing point, and or multidimensional experiences that we may have had, because we can all learn from one another. And that's how private pain becomes publicly understood. And this is how all great steps in our evolution have taken place. There was suffering in one way or another that was taken for granted or neglected or ignored in some layer of society. Then that pain at some point became public instead of just private suffering. It became publicly understood. Public empathy could grow from that. Public understanding and wisdom could grow from that. And so measurements were taken or new guidelines were installed to avoid or prevent that kind of suffering from happening again. And this has been continuously in our modern history as we know it today, the case with women's rights or child's protection services, or you name it, all kinds of these kind of guidelines that we have been using so far to secure order, I suppose. And the great paradox of where we are right now, we're in this interesting tipping point, I feel, because all of that was really valuable, and it is also still being held together by an old paradigm system of rules and regulations. So the next step up, my personal understanding of this right now, is that we will grow into such a deep level of understanding and empathy and telepathy that these rules and regulations will no longer be necessary for human beings to recognize the humanity in one another and want the best for one another. That will just be our natural inclination. Just, I think, how we're born to be. Really, that's just me. I think we're going to return to that deeper understanding, of how interconnected we really are. So eventually, and this is really beautiful, then I see in the download that the break at the neck of the boy is in fact very easily fixed. They, meaning other people, place the head back on his body, and suddenly the boy becomes an adult immediately and is completely healed. There's only a very thin line where the break was, no trace of any real damage. So he immediately becomes this beautiful, balanced, centered, whole human being, a grown man, a real space holder, like somebody that you immediately feel at ease with. The energy that radiated from this new man, this risen man, was incredibly comforting. And so I immediately understood in this dream that was the representation of the divine masculine, and that as a result of that, automatically the woman in the dream that was hanging the laundry before, that she could rest into the bedding of the divine feminine. And so both of these aspects, which I believe are within all of us, we all contain divine feminine and divine masculine aspects. Both of these forces could then work in harmony together. So this new man had risen and was just standing there at the end of the dream, fully whole. And that's when I woke up. And I was like, oh, I have to write this down. And it probably took me an hour back then. And it took me even way longer to get all of this symbology sorted out. But let's see, I think we have it all. This is all of it. Yes. So really, maybe, just like in this dream, we're all going through a big transformation where new ways of being are being explored, masks are dropping, and new energies are being received and exchanged. So I feel the actual magic, the underlying message in all of this is in this symbology of the little wrapped in plastic gingerbread figures. I feel that all of us, we are all walking around with gifts and we're just keeping them from one another, or at least many people still are. And the layer between us recognizing our own gifts and feeling confident enough to share them with the rest of the world and actually acting on that is just this thin. It's as thin as cellophane plastic, and it's so easy to open up. So I just love the idea. I think the overarching message of this particular download is for all of us to open up these cookie bags and start enjoying and sharing with others what is in there. Because it's already there, it's ready. It is literally ready. It's already on top of the old system. The foundation is there and we can build from there. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a really hard and difficult thing, I believe, which is why I came up with the, where is it? So much paper. Which is why I came up with the affirmation that I started this video with, and I'm gonna end with it as well. Full circle. Thank you guys for sticking with me all the way to the end of this. So I'm just gonna read it one more time. I am the gentle, emphasize gentle. I am the gentle shift in the world's financial system. I am the presence of wisdom, order, and well-being for all. As the old dissolves, only the light remains. All transitions unfold in perfect harmony for all of mankind and for the earth itself. And so it is. It already is. So as we allow ourselves to focus on that idea, we shift to that version of reality, or at least those of us who believe this is possible. We live in a time of believing is seeing, not the other way around. And as we believe, we amp up the momentum into the direction of that which is possible, but perhaps not yet seen or remembered yet by us. I believe we can do this. I believe that this particular download is just one tiny puzzle piece of a much, much broader picture that you listening right now have another part of in your pocket. So what would you do to take it out and show it to the world? What does your puzzle piece look like? What have you been dreaming? What have you been sensing or feeling as you observe the world stage, or rather your inner world stage? What have you been observing lately? And if you care to share that with me, please do so. I would be ever so appreciative. This has probably been the longest video I've made in years. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I appreciate you tremendously, and I'm really looking forward to see you in the next one. Love you loads. Bye.